All right, hello. So welcome to Startup Business Q&A episode 108. And today's episode is actually one thing I can count on one hand the number of times this has happened, which is a pre-recorded Q&A. So don't turn it off. Don't worry. It doesn't matter because it's not live. The key thing about this is that we're still answering really important questions. And I've got a really wonderful one that was sent through to me over the weekend. So I wanted to use this opportunity to record an answer to this, because I think it's a question that's on a lot of people's lips. It's something that comes up quite a bit. But firstly, just to explain, I'm not physically live today, so you're watching this on Monday the 20th, because of the combination of it being my daughter's birthday today. It might not be quite so cool just to say, everyone just stop, I'm going to go live for a bit because there's a big party going on. But in addition to that, I'm also going for a checkup after having surgery about almost 5 weeks ago now, so I have to do that too. Some things, have to move something else out of the way, and the Q&A's had to suffer to a degree, but I think that just not being live is no big deal. So we continue. Every week we still deliver something. Even when I've had operations in the past, we've still had something pre-recorded. But yeah, I think with this, maybe the third time this has ever happened, and usually it's because I'm unconscious getting cut open in surgery. It's twice that's happened, and today a birthday, which you'll thank me for, or rather you'll excuse, I'm sure, and a check-up on my progress. So today's question is about, it relates to something that comes up a lot, which is this idea of, how do I navigate the validation of maybe a new startup, a new business I'm building, and this idea that perhaps I've got many competitors, or maybe there's only one or two, and if there is a path one can take, in either direction, which one would I want to take? And it's interesting because it's not as simple as you may think, and many people might think, well, surely pick the one with least competitors because it makes it easier. You don't want to be competing with so many people. And I don't know if this is as simple as that. So let's have a look at the question. This is from Zach Husson, who, in his words, I think he said, this was Friday or Saturday last week, he said, and by the way, happy birthday to Zach. It was his birthday on the 16th last week, so Thursday, and he said, I've got a cracker of a question for you. So I said, well, fire away, because I need to pre-record something, and we'll use that as an example. And he's asked, Richard, when validating your business idea and looking at the competition, is the battlefield better if there's lots of smaller companies doing similar stuff, or one company that seems to have the entire market covered? So specifically, he's not just asking about if there's lots of companies or very few. He's saying lots doing similar stuff that are smaller, or one that seems to have the entire market covered. For example, is it better to open a digital marketing company? Every other person in the world seems to be doing that at the moment, and compete with, in his exact number was 100 millions of others, hundreds of millions of others, or start a ride-sharing app and compete with Uber. Better here means a better chance that your business will succeed, and assuming you have the capabilities to do so both equally well. And there is a really quick, simple answer here, and doesn't mean you should finish watching, but there is a really important way to look at this, which is, I need to be careful because people misuse the word good. And if you're a reader of Seth Godin, as I am, and I'm a kind of quite the disciple of his, you will know that the word good relates to things that are potentially quite dangerous. Good, in his, using his parlance, is actually average. Bad is better than being good. Great is better than being good. Good equals average, which means you're the same as everyone else. And it's a dangerous, dangerous place to be. Because if you're good, it means you just fit in and no one cares. And good represents the hundreds of millions of companies there, for example, Zach. And you can pay them no mind. The good, let me be specific if I use these terms right. The great thing about, there was a massive moth in here. The great thing about good companies is you can pay them no mind. I really don't worry at all about good consultants. I just don't worry. I don't worry in the slightest about good sales coaches. I don't worry at all about people who are good at going to a company helping their leadership teams. Because good, I blow them out of the water. And you should too with the thing that you do. So good doesn't matter in the slightest. Good is dangerous. Good is just fitting in. I'm doing a tweet a week. I'm making not too much noise. I'm not putting out video or anything like that. It's a bit too much for me. I've got my little website that was updated last 3 years ago. I get a little bit of business. I'm just sitting right in the middle of the road and I'm being very innocuous. Good might as well not be there. And if you're in that place, you need to get the hell out of there by being something extreme. Go extreme in some direction by being a bit bigger or being great at what you do. So good is dangerous. Good fades into the background. No one cares about good. Good muddles by on the kind of wage. If you're an entrepreneur with a startup, good tends to get the kind of wage you probably had in a 9-to-5 anyway, with probably a bit more stress. Bad is noteworthy. Bad is the kind of thing where people talk about it. Bad is divisive, and bad can be fantastic, because for everyone who thinks they're bad, some people think they're phenomenal. Okay, I've come across people in the past, marketers, who are really bad morally and ethically, or in terms of technique, but they seem to get gravity around, people who blindly follow them just think they're amazing, so that works for them. But bad is almost better, because at least you're making some noise. So you don't want to be good, you want to be great. And we want to stand out and focus on this. And it's funny, because in the past, a lot of people have said things to me like, you've got to be careful, Richard, when you talk about aspirations for people. You need to manage expectations. You don't want to suggest to people they can achieve really great, really huge things, because that's not being realistic. And it's wonderful when you hear that, because no one who ever made something huge, who was audacious enough to really step out and make something of themselves and become great, ever said that. And so you're on the right path then. So in the pursuit of great, you can disregard anyone who's certainly bad, but also good. So you need to look carefully at what it is that you really bring to the table. If it was a ride-sharing app, for example, then I'd want to make sure that I do something great to begin with. Now, the thing I do great might be that I bring something new to the table. And Uber originally brought something new to the table because you could do it through your iPhone. Whereas it might be that a newer version, in the same way as there's a new, I cannot remember the name of it right now, but there's a new type of search engine, and for every 10 searches or whatever you do, they plant a tree or something like that. There's something unique about that, I suppose, and that's quite great if you're into that kind of thing. But all is to say, you should niche down a bit and focus on something that allows you to be great for a small group of people to begin with. Your problem with any business when you first start it is usually not what you're doing. Your problem usually is that you have an issue around obscurity, insofar as no one knows who the hell you are. So you can have a weak product or an amazing product, but if no one knows who you are, it doesn't really matter. And this is the thing about people who have online courses. They don't think, for example, when they say, oh, no one's buying my course, so the course must be no good. No, because you only know if the course is any good if you've done the course. And I know there's social proof and so on, but the point is there. If no one knows about it, then no one knows to try and buy it and see if it's any good. So it's never your product. It's usually because no one knows who the hell you are. If you look at some marketers who've become very prominent, their courses aren't they're not like earth-shattering information. They're just well publicised. They've spent a good amount of money on advertising. They've done that bit well. They've created good hype in their marketing. And as a result, people have found them, and so obscurity has been conquered. And as a result, then you have a lot of units being shifted. So looking at this specifically, at the wording here, is the battlefield, so where you're playing, is it better to reside where there are lots of smaller companies doing similar stuff, or one company that seems to have the entire market covered? So I'm just using the wording here. Both are actually very similar, because in a battlefield where there are hundreds of millions of smaller companies doing similar stuff, most of them, like seriously almost all of them, will be not necessarily very good. And if that many exist, it will represent the number of consumers of that service or product that could be, you know, tapped into. So all is to say there's enough slices of the pie to go around. So I would never have a problem. For instance, I don't right now have a problem with the fact that in 2018 I've just launched an events business, and it is a little nebulous in its structure in the sense of how it's being built into one of my businesses at the moment, but in terms of it being a vehicle that is driving events, it's already making money, it's running events, and we've got a wonderful growth strategy ahead with some amazing people on board. And how many events companies are there out there? I worked for one about 10 years ago, and you know, they're 2 a penny. There's so many, and it's of no consequence, because what matters is you do something really well. It could be you host your events at amazing locations, not particularly unique, but not everyone does that. It could be that your events are about a particular focus or a particular thing. It could be that your events have outrageously good speakers. So mine, for example, are hosted at the moment at community working spaces like WeWork. That's not particularly amazing at all. It's just a normal average place. But it means because I'm a member, I can rock up, book the place. They've got all the AV set up, plug in a laptop, and we're good. And there's free beer. And that's pretty impressive because it's all there for us. So I don't need to go hire the, the Crown Plaza yet. We can just do it this way, nice and lean to begin with. Other places and other companies I've worked with where their conferences are at world-class venues, and that's their thing. Some real prestigious locations. I remember working with one, going all the time to these amazing locations, and it just was, you know, that was the vibe. People were all the same who attend, but the actual, you know, it felt like this prestigious thing. You know, you'd have a string quartet playing and all that kind of thing. But you know, it's different things for different people. So if venue's not my thing, it's speakers is my focus. It's very narrow. It's focused on entrepreneurship, and there tends to be something of a thread running through a particular theme. But the speakers are world class, so outrageously impressive people that work with well-known brands and so on. Because I feel that's a strong draw for the attendees. So that's my thing. It's not seriously unique. It's not like the world is going, wow. Nowhere on this planet are there events with amazing speakers. It's just that for a very small, intimate event of only 40 people, and one that's very young as well, to have speakers of this caliber is typically unheard of. But you know, it's a combination of using a very flourishing network on LinkedIn with an ability to sell people to come and speak, and I think that's really helped a lot. So I'm not worried in the slightest about the fact there are thousands and thousands and thousands of companies out there, many of them just in London alone, competing in the same space, because on that battlefield it just doesn't matter. I know I'm great at what I'm doing. I'm great at networking. I'm great at filling a room. Okay, I'm great at holding court and making an event thrive enough that people then want to come again. You see, and I think I've been in a world where a company has to knock on doors every single time for new people to attend because they're just a bit naff, you know. So that's not a worry. But if I imagined that there was only one conference company in the world, in London, and they had, you know, they'd sewn up all the events that you could run, I'd still do it, you know, because if I could do it, see, I'm not competing with Microsoft right now for Windows. You know, I'm not building a new operating system, because to do something like that takes immense resources. That's not the marketing side so much. It's just producing a product that has the quality of something that Microsoft have. You know, they've got a heritage of 35, 40 years or whatever it is. Whereas if you look at something like a conference company, if there was one out there, it'd be absurd, that scenario. But on that battlefield, if there was one conference company out there, I could really step up, because it's a case of saying, not everyone's going to go to these set of events. All I've got to do is start. And the thing is, you've got to think about what you define as your first milestones and objectives. And you've got to think to yourself, where do I really want to go? I want to go and make myself an amazing events company, but I've got to start with just running an event. I've got to start with some wins. And if I was running a ride-sharing app to compete with Uber, it'd have to be a decent app. But all I would be doing is the same as Phil Knight did when he launched his first business before it became Nike, before he founded Nike. The same as Daymond John did with Fubu, and that's approach people, walking up to them and saying, what do you think of this? Try this out, speak to friends and family. You know, when I launched my first online course in 2015, it's just the start of 2015, 8-Step Startup, I spent immense amount of time every day direct messaging the thousands of contacts I'd been warming up, hundreds at the very least, over, you know, the past year, talking to them about this course and offering it to them and getting them to buy in and try the thing out. And I became synonymous with 8-Step Startup as a result, and I then pivoted away from it. But the point is that I warmed up people, I did them one by one, and that takes a lot of time. Whenever I launch a course or a product, I will sit down and DM people directly. Not to say, hey, do this, it's to engage and all that kind of thing, but I would write them individual messages, each one of them. Each of the first event, we got 51 sign-ups for a 40-person event, and you know, we managed to like half fill a room. Actually, it wasn't too bad. A free event on a lovely summer's day. Not everyone wanted to show up in the end, but that's no problem. But the point is to get that many people decide to register. That's from sitting down and sending people message after message after message, and putting in hours of work just to get the ball rolling at least. Because if you're great, you just got to show a few people that you're great, and then they start wanting to talk about you. LinkedIn in February, for me, was absolute crickets. There's literally nothing going on. LinkedIn now, I posted something yesterday, and it's, you know, nailed through 100 likes and, you know, however many 50-odd comments and a couple of thousand views of a video. Just a couple of minutes of me chatting with a bloke. So, you know, being great at something in particular means people will talk about you, and you just got to share it and focus in not just on being great at the product itself or what it is you do, but broadcasting that, not by telling people you're great, but by showing people you're great. So that might mean putting out and doing some things for free, you know, proving to people that they can't live without your ride sharing app, for example. You know, I invested last year in a vineyard up in Sonoma, which is north of San Francisco. And this is a great example of putting money into a startup that had just started to. They decided to produce their own wine in a particular way. It was using a very ancient Georgian approach. Georgia, not the state, but Georgia, the country, in fact, over in Europe. And the idea is that they would use this special type of urn, they would bury them underground, and, you know, they were starting very much from scratch. They had land they were working with in another vineyard, but in essence, they were starting up in the middle of Sonoma. You know, you've got Sonoma, you've got Napa. There couldn't be more wine coming out of that region. So to all intents and purposes, there's a lot of people there doing that. And there's a lot of big houses there too. And, you know, they're flourishing. And the reason why is because there's a focus on socially networking around people who would be interested in that, spreading the word. And then, you know, I'm a family member of one of the people working there, and so I'm sharing it with people, and then I invested in it, and we've all pulled together, and because we want to get it, and because I went up there and checked it out last year and tried to, and I was like, this is amazing, and then I start sharing it and telling other people, and then, you know, my brother-in-law who works there is going to different, you know, he's going all over. He's come to London, he's gone to New York, but he's also around the area where they live, near San Francisco. He's meeting people and seeing people that could potentially, you know, try the wine out, and it creates a buzz. It's minute. It's a pinprick of a buzz. No one would know it other than a few hundred people, but it's enough to build something. And that's the thing. This is the crux of what I'm trying to talk about today. That's the thing that really requires the most energy. It's that community focus. And as the years go on, but certainly even just this year alone, it becomes more and more apparent to me that what you do is very important. And it might be content you're producing, or it might be a product you're building, or a service you're providing. It matters, but not nearly as much as the focus on a strong amount of time, every day without exception, inside your community. and that's sitting on your phone, sending direct messages to influencers or sneezers, to go back to Seth Godin, who could, you know, advocate for you. I was very fortunate to speak last week with a guy called Fraser Cameron. So he has 4 times the followers I have on LinkedIn. He's so well thought of. And you just think, you know, I put out a quick video with him, and the result has been fantastic. It gives me so much because he's a guy that I knew I'd get on with. He's a guy who has a great following, so if he says something or does something, it's going to knock on to people like me if I'm tagged in it. But also I knew that our philosophies would be very much aligned, so I got on the phone with him. He lives down in France. We had a great chat. We didn't stop talking. It was like non-stop for almost an hour. We really got on. And you could say, as a business leader, spending probably almost an hour on a call with one person is tremendously inefficient, but that's bullshit. It was actually a very, very efficient use of my time, because to then produce a small video that goes out to his followers as well as mine means that people are more aware of me, and those that even know me but love this guy Fraser Cameron, they're like, well, by association, then what a good dude. And some of the messages are they're like, you guys are great. And you know, it's about building this positive feel around you and getting into the community every day. And if it's a few direct messages or comments on people's posts or whatever, you need to move yourself to a place where personally people are thinking very highly of you. Too much of the problem, and here's your takeaway if you like, too much of the problem around all this is that companies, especially startups, are sitting behind a hope that a product or service will just propel them. But there's this faceless business. And what I mean really by faceless isn't that there's someone who's not showing themselves, but you know, in 2018 there needs to be personality behind a business, and if that's not a person, it needs to be the company itself. Compare the Market probably doesn't exist in the US, but here in the UK they have a wonderful brand around meerkats, and they have Hollywood stars doing it and things like that. You have Money Supermarket and things like that, but on TV, and you know, James Corden, who's on some car price comparison thing. So you're bringing in big brands. There isn't a person running that company that we know. We don't know who the hell that person is. There's a lot of well-known brands where no one knows who the leader is. But there are some where they do. You know, many people do know who Jeff Bezos is. Many people who do know who, you know, Sam Walton was and things like that. But in reality, what you need is some personification of your business, some vibe about your business. And if it's not you as the personal brand being leveraged, then the business needs that. Many people, I think probably the majority of most Apple, not the overwhelming majority, but the majority of iPhone owners don't know who the hell Tim Cook is, the CEO. They probably haven't a clue. It's only the tech heads like me who know these kind of things. So I don't think people know that, but they still have that personality and vibe coming through from Apple itself, whatever it represents, and it being cool or hip or creative, media savvy kind of business, or whatever you want to call it. Whatever its vibe is and it represents, they're aware of that. Back to my point is that a lot of startups don't embrace that. And there's a fear because they don't want to put themselves out too much or get laughed at. But that's where you are ramming yourself in that good bracket. And it's dangerous because what you're doing is you're saying to yourself, I just hope that the product takes and does well on its own. And you're not really putting into the thing that matters, which is creating a personality around what you're doing. Everything else really is overthinking. Create a personality around what you're doing, and then force it out into a wonderful set of close people who are going to start, evangelizing for you because you are great. Even if you look at hedge funds, for example, if you look at a company like, there's a book I've got up here about Stephan Schwarzman. A book called Kings of Capital, an amazing book. And so, this is the guy who founded BlackRock. And as an investment business, you're like, okay, it's called BlackRock, and, that's that. But if you look at it, it's the guy. He had nothing we had nothing but a reputation to start with. And so it was him showing up and knocking on people's doors and raising. And it was like, right, we need to raise like this many hundreds of millions of pounds of dollars of capital to build this thing. And he was showing up, and the personality is larger of life. He and his sidekick, I forget their name, Stephen Schwartzman's there, and it's like people wanted to give him money because he's this great guy. So he's leveraging his personal brand to a degree, but his reputation. Warren Buffett's a great example of that. If he decides to go behind any brand, people will go invest in it. He's a market maker because of that. If you look at Gary Vaynerchuk with VaynerMedia, without question, it's probably a great media company. But there's no reason. There's every reason that people would want to work with them because they've probably got great business developers. But without question, people work with VaynerMedia because of the brand Gary Vaynerchuk is such a leverage point, and it creates an awareness about it. So I think drawing this together, what's important is that we understand that we need to start with wins, and that is with people around us in a small, tight space, a niche, that are like, wow, I really like this person, I'm an advocate for him. The reason why I know my events are going to be winners is, firstly, I back myself, but that's based on evidence of knowing that there's a community behind me, wonderful people that I've invested insane amounts of hours in, like every day, without exception, other than the day in September last year where I was unconscious through surgery and then on such morphine I couldn't do a thing for probably another 15 hours or so. Other than that, I always show up. It might be in a small amount each day, or it might be hours. It might be 4 hours sitting there engaging with loads of people. And by doing that, what I'm doing is I'm investing in the community that will support me, and if I do a great enough job, then they will lift me up as well. I do that like I would with a family member. When it's their time, then they get their time. And I just think that the result of this is that when it comes to, for example, today, as I'm recorded this, but for today, for the 20th of August, I'm launching a newsletter, which is a weekly newsletter, and you can go to therichardmoore.com and sign up. Just scroll down, it's right there. You put your first name and email and you grab it. That weekly newsletter has had instant traction, and it's not like I've launched it and nothing's happened. I've launched it, and beforehand I mentioned it to the community, and a load of people have signed up. Is it tens of thousands? No, but loads have signed up, and it means that we've got traction straight away. The Entrepreneur Business Live events, I mentioned them, and then people started signing up. I've got people already asking me about October and November. Do you see what I mean? So the point here is that if I invest heavily in making sure at least me, because instead of leveraging the business, my business isn't the one with the personality that's being pushed out here. It's me personally. I'm the kind of the head of it. If I do a good enough job, great enough job, and keep a community feeling great about what I'm doing, then I can launch new products. This is all the point of personal brand. A lot of people love to talk about personal brand, but the point of it is it creates leverage so that when you launch your new thing, people are up for it. Already, I have people lined up, ready to jump for January. They're like, let me know the dates. When are the dates? Because in January, we've got our first Entrepreneur Business Live event. We're launching in New York. I'm launching my US ones in 2019. So there are already people who have said, we will go to that event. And that's not launched yet. There's no proof of anything. The only proof of concept we've got is that if you take aside the event with Kurt Mercadante a couple of weeks ago, we've done one event at the end of July. We're about to do the next one in September. I've already announced amazing speakers with Toph Evans and Rebecca Godfrey. I'm about to announce another one in the coming week. But the point here is that, that's already winning that event, and it's 4 or 5 months away, and it's because of insane amounts of time investing in that small community. Outside of that bubble, no one has a clue who the hell I am. No one has a clue what's going on. No one's ever heard of me. But within that bubble, within the group of people, in that small set of people, that power base as many know it, it has to be thriving intensely with you helping people out, giving great value, and being a great person as much as you can. Really not trying to be arrogant here. What I'm trying to say is if you show up for people like you do your friends, then your tight bubble or circle or group of people become your friends by kind of a proxy friend, or quasi friends, the term, I suppose. Because yeah, I mean, a definition of friend might be that you meet that person, you pat them on the back and you have a beer with them every 2 minutes. But I consider a lot of people I know online have never met in my life and possibly will never meet to be friends as well. And if you have that right dynamic with them, if you do great stuff, if you show up genuinely and film all the time, a few years can go by and it's surprising what you'll get out of that. People who don't blindly follow you because they'll correct you if you do something wrong, but they really dig what you're great at. Because if you can put enough of a, as I call it, a pure signal out about the thing you're great at, that will really, really resonate with them. So it's a really wonderful question. The answer, in short, Zach, is it doesn't matter, actually. Which one is better? There isn't one. Because what matters is you focus, you're aware of this competitor, this one big competitor, or you're aware of the top few big companies, or the top businesses that are a handful of hundreds of millions, and you focus on them and you go, okay, I know they're in existence. Maybe you look at what mistakes they've made, make sure you avoid them, but otherwise you've got to do you. You've got to focus on the people that are in your tight power base, in your inner circle. You need to work very, very hard on keeping that audience warm, building them up and adding to them. Map back from a scenario where people are going to be talking about you a load. Map back from a place where people are like, this guy's amazing, I really like him, and I want to share with my network, because it's good social currency for me, that this is a really great guy. If you can do that, then you'll find that your voice becomes much louder and your net can be cast wider, because there's this huge scope of broadcastability of you, because people are behind you. And I think that it's essential to never overlook the importance of working on your community through collaboration, through DMs and so on. So look, thank you so much, Zach. It was a really great question. I hope I did you a good treatment there. It was a really great one to ask, and this has been a really fun episode. It's an important thing, because this kind of thing comes up a lot in those initial stages of consideration when you're validating or deciding on your business. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about there being one or many. Focus on being great at the thing you're going to bring. And being great means really going in all in on it and creating a perception that you're great as well, not just internally, but also to the small group of people who are going to be your initial advocates, and work on them every day, like you do with your family and your children, for example, to make them better, because over time they will grow from tens to hundreds to thousands, and then you're really going. And what happens is that those small seeds can really help you explode.